Welcome back, fellow Spy fans. Once again, we're talking about The Night Manager. This week, we're talking about episode 5. If you haven't seen the show or haven't caught up on our previous episodes, you can go back and listen to those. Or if you just kind of want to listen in now, just a quick recap. Our protagonist, Jonathan Pine, played by Tom Hiddleston, is a night manager at some really upscale hotel. Comes across some really incriminating information about an arms dealer and is recruited by a British intelligence officer played by Olivia Colman to take down our main antagonist, Richard Roper, played by Hugh Laurie. Last week was kind of like more of a transition episode, but we saw things kind of starting to explode between him and Corky, and Jonathan Pine being put up as the front man for the company Trade Pass. This episode, we get to see the big arms deal kind of go down, but before we go into that, I wanted to discuss everything that's happening with Angela and Limpet.
Mm-hmm.
She starts seeing a lot of pressure, lots and lots of pressure. And I kind of wanted to go over that like briefly before we get into like the big meat of the episode, which is kind of the arms deal. But she's getting it from every side. I guess people at the River House, as well as CIA on America, like her buddy from Over America got reassigned to ATF stuff. The funding for Olympic got pulled. The permanent secretary removes Rex as in charge of international enforcement. So he's reassigned. He's like promoted, and he's like not happy about it. But
yeah, can we talk about that? I got notes on that one.
Yeah, I'd love. That's kind of where I wanted to start out. Like that was if you're team bad guy, right, or team, well, the justification that all of the people helping Richard Roper in government positions is the world needs a Richard Roper, and us keeping tabs on him is better than not. And so we got to protect him, even though they're getting paid to protect him. But, we keep hearing this justification. It's national security. We're protecting the nation. And so if you're on team bad guy, the idea is Rex doesn't want to play ball. Angela doesn't want to play ball. So the permanent secretary basically promotes Rex out of his position, so he no longer makes the calls for Angela's operation as well as Limpet. What do you think about that? Is that like a good move for Team Bad Guy, or like what are your thoughts on that?
Well, to answer that, I think we got to look at the actual promotion that he's getting,
Right.
or that he's being offered.
Right.
So we established the permanent secretary. I'm pretty sure it's the highest level of unelected official of any bureau. What he's being offered is called the private secretary. This is the person that is responsible for filling in Downing Street, like the Crown, the Royals, the Queen, on intelligence matters.
Oh, so it's kind of like the president's briefer every morning that they get?
Well, sort of, but the president is an executive office, and the Queen is not.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, there's that big difference. But I meant like every morning the president gets a guy that walks in, or a lady that walks in and briefs. Is that what he's getting?
Yes.
Okay. I see.
That's what he's getting offered. So, basically, it's like, not in the same way that it was meant in The Godfather, but like an offer he can't refuse. Like it's such a prestigious position. I'm a little unclear here on whether I think it seems like it's basically a prerequisite that you have to be a knight to even be considered for this. Or I was having a little trouble reading exactly how it works, but maybe it's that if you get this offer, it pretty much comes with a knighthood. This position. So what they're appealing to here is his what now? I mean, I'm sure it comes with a big fat paycheck, but also it's just for a British citizen, it's kind of like star dazzling. kind of thing.
Right,
I
but
mean,
he didn't
well,
seem
maybe,
very
I mean, there's
happy about it.
different British people have different opinions about,
Right.
but the thing is, he's accepting it. This is not something you force someone on. This is like an enormous honor that you, well, also maybe it's something you don't, you really kind of can't with a small c say no to.
That's what I kind of felt because it looked like he didn't want it, and then the secretary gives him that like death stare. Unless you don't want it, like kind of like some like like in a lot of cultures, there's certain things you don't say no to, and if the queen is like you're going to be my assistant, like you're going to be the assistant to like basically the crown, you don't say no. Like that's like things are gonna get. You're gonna have it. Like what is it? The suffer. You're gonna have a bad time, right? Like that's how I felt. But like, did you get the impression that he kind of voluntarily was like, "Wow, I can't turn this down." This is like the biggest honor someone can receive.
I'll tell you, yeah, my impression is he's voluntarily taking it because he does want it, but
Oh,
he's also kind of, I mean, he's got some guilt. He's feeling some guilt
right.
about being a sellout.
Hmm.
But from there, I go to, I mean, we have established some things about his character. What in his character does Team Bad Guy see? Like, what I'm worried, if I'm Team Bad Guy, this is what I'm worried about. Like, let's say someone makes this proposal in the meeting room where we say, "What are we going to do about Rex and Angela?" And
Uh,
someone makes this proposal. I might raise my hand and say, "What's to stop him from his first briefing with the Royals being?" Well, here's what's going on.
that's a good point.
And would it matter? And could they do anything about it? I don't know enough. I definitely don't know enough about British politics to answer that question. But I'm smart
Well,
enough
if Roper is that
to ask
highly
to ask it.
right, if Roper's that highly connected, right? Because that's kind of what he tells Angela. He's like, we don't have enough allies. You know what I mean? And maybe it just goes so high up he can't fight it. That's that's kind of why it felt like the impression to me was it was kind of like, well, since you don't want to play ball with us, we're just going to promote you out of it so you can't make this decision anymore. And yeah, go tell the Royals. Either they're not going to believe you or hey, they probably are just as connected as we are.
Yeah, again, I don't see what's stopping them from stopping her from just overruling him and saying, look, Limpet's closed down and we're replacing Angela Byrne. That's all there is to say about it. I'm your boss. Shut up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely can see the appeal. It just I don't know. It just kind of felt weird. The whole thing felt weird, and like what's really sticking to me is that line he gives Angela. Is like we didn't have enough allies. On top of the Americans not funding Limpet anymore, like she just gets hit every which way, like from all angles. And I think we should talk about some of these too. Do you think the pressure um, is working on her, or do you think it's going to provoke her, or do you think it's shooting themselves in the foot, like as in they're just incriminating themselves, like who's gonna believe Angela at this point, right? Is I guess what they're thinking, and they're kind of do it underhanded. Like Drumgold visits her at her house, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like definitely putting the implication, like you don't want to mess with this. Like I'm here to be your friend,
Well,
like very. Huh?
yeah. I mean, there's that undercurrent, but also he's kind of making the Billy Crudup speech at the end of MI3 when it was Billy Crudup, right? That betrayed was working for Philip Seymour
Oh yeah, yeah,
Hoffman
yeah.
and
Right,
stuff.
right.
And he makes his speech about like this is for the good of the country, this is for the good of the crown. Like we have to get in bed with bad guys sometimes to do the right thing for what's best for Britain.
Hmm.
In Crudup's case, it was the U.S. But that was the text. If you want to say the subtext is that there's a veiled threat involved, I could buy that. Is it a good idea? Sure. I don't know. They seem to be just kind of throwing the, like you said, kind of throwing the kitchen sink at her.
Right, and you know, he says to her, "I believe you've been lying to me about Limpet. You have an insider. I need to know who he is." And you know, he's really pressuring her for information, and she's not giving it up. And it ends up leading where they like break into her house and beat up her husband. You know, and she's been trying to protect him as much as she can, like keep him out of the intelligence world. You know, she's a very dedicated wife, even though you know she may not be like head over heels in love with the guy. It's her husband, and father of her child. You know, and she's been doing everything to protect him from this world, and it comes home, you know. So they really got, you know, putting her on the third degree here, you know what I mean. And I'm wondering, like, is this a good idea? And I don't know, like, it getting so close to home might make her feel like she really can't, especially since Rex was reassigned to funding for Limpet's got. She must feel like she's completely alone in the world. She's got nobody.
I mean, if we're still trying to answer the question, like, I don't think it's the kind of overkill that we see in Enemy of the State.
Oh, yeah, right.
I could totally see all this stuff working. I mean, at least on paper, and at least to you know, a certain macho mindset. You know, a pregnant woman's got certain kind of survival instincts, maybe that you know, an unmarried, unpregnant younger woman might not have.
Right. I see.
Although, you know, I'm not advising that you, you know, threaten the mama bear and corner her, but, you know, as long as she's got a way out, which she does, she could just kind of drop it. But we know she's not going to drop it because we have her speech. We know, we've established like she's got an Ahab white whale kind of complex regarding Roper. So, and they might not know that. It doesn't look like they know that.
That her Ahab thing? Well, they made a comment in episode 1 that she just was relentless and wouldn't let it go, that she had this conspiracy theory or something.
Oh, that's right. Actually, I think Mayhew brought it up, that she's always had a boner for Roper. Yeah, that's true. But I don't know if Team Bad Guy knows that.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like,
and so without that piece of information, you know, like, remember the permanent secretary, when she first started putting the screws in on Rex, was to ask him, like, how well do you know her? Which implies that they don't have like a full psychological profile breakdown on her, which actually they should, because she used to work for MI6.
Right. You would think they had some sort of, and she did tours, right? Like, she was out internationally at stations and stuff, and did a lot of like real intel work, you know. So they would have something on her, I guess. I don't know. But we're, you know, whether it's a good idea or not, it's really good for some good storytelling, because it really does kind of make you feel like the pressure's on for her, and is she gonna get out of it or whatever.
Right. Now they shut Limpet down, or at least withdraw the. I mean, well, Limpet was always a joint operation or an American-led operation. I mean, it doesn't feel like an American-led operation.
No, it was more British, with the International Enforcement Agency or whatever that Angela's running, but because of her contacts with America, they got American funding, so it was kind of like a joint type of operation. I'm sure, you know, if it worked out, the U.S. we would have taken more credit than we deserve,
right?
Since we're footing the bill, you know. But no, it seems like it was her op that she was running,
right? And her friend, it's Stedman, right? With the Vulcaneers. See, there on the U.S. side, they did the simple thing. They just reassigned him. No muss, no fuss. Right. Whereas on the British side, they're doing it all complicated. But the weird thing is, to me, kind of is like, I mean, even after he gets pulled out and he tells her Limpet's shut down, like, her and her people are still working. They still seem to be, you know, getting paychecks and doing their operational stuff.
Mhm.
Is there some point where isn't there some point in this series where they actually like close down Angela's office?
Maybe the next episode, but that hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
It's been a while since I watched, so I've been purposely trying to stay away from getting ahead of myself for these because I've actually been enjoying this format quite a bit. Um,
Oh yeah, me
but
too. Me too.
uh, but I mean, they don't even really need to shut it down with everything they're doing. But you're right. How come they didn't just reassign her? I mean, Rex was the one to make that decision. They tried to get him to do it. He wouldn't do it. So now they just reassigned him, and they're probably going to find someone who will reassign her or take her off or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But that, by the way, that's how we get into this mess to begin with. Is they pressured Rex. Rex shows the permanent secretary the evidence that Angela has. That information gets back to Roper, which I think is a good segue to the big meat of this episode, which is the big arms deal, as well as like Roper sussing out the leak. I think last time you had mentioned like kind of as a bad tradecraft idea, like why did they have Apostol write his handwriting on the paper? And they actually pointed that out this episode that that's how they figured out Apostol was involved was they saw his handwriting on the documents that got leaked that Rex had shown the permanent secretary. So this kind of is what kicks off Roper figuring out someone's on the inside, and he's got to find out who. And I just wanted to point out that you spotted that last week. So I think a good job on that because that's really, even though it's Apostol's handwriting, they're still able to figure out. Well, the documents were there. They asked Apostol to connect the dots. Who had the documents before Apostol? And so he's like, well, it's only me or Sandy that had those documents. So it could only be somebody within my circle. So it could have been Jed, Jonathan, or Corky. Those are kind of the only people, unless it's some of the help. But I doubt the help could get through to his secret office or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Can I want to talk briefly about it's like a counterfactual kind of thing. A lot of the stuff with on Team Bad Guy trying to figure out who's the traitor, right? It makes sense only if there was only ever one copy of these documents, either physical, as we've seen, or maybe on Roper's personal hard drive, not connected to the internet. Which, by the way, I noticed actually that makes me remember that he didn't have a computer on his desk, and we never see him using a computer or any of
That's right.
the Team Bad guys. So and that.
Well, Corky had that laptop when he was looking up Pine.
Okay. I forgot about that. But in general, and maybe Roper's just not a computer guy.
Right.
But if I mean it, what do these documents actually represent? If there's only a single copy in existence, then everything they do makes sense. But does it make sense that there's only a single copy in existence? What purpose does it serve? Just sitting in Roper's desk, and he's never shown it to anyone. It's just personal notes to himself. You see what I'm saying? Like the documents.
Well, that's one thing that bothered me too. Was why are these financial documents saying napalm on them and Stinger missiles and shit? Like you would think there'd be code words.
Why?
Unless it's so he has some leverage on the buyers.
Why did they have
I'm not the only.
Why did they have the trade pass letterhead on the top of them?
Right.
That's unnecessary. Like these documents, like physically on the screen as I'm watching as an audience, these look like documents that are meant to, not for everyone in the organization, but that they were printed out so that you could share them, so you could make copies. So Sandy could have a copy and Corky could have a copy and Roper could have a copy and maybe pass them on to Apostol as he's the lawyer working on the thing. But everything in the show falls apart and doesn't make sense if you can imagine that there was ever a second or a third copy in existence of these papers. Every decision and every insight or deduction that Roper or anyone else makes all rests on the idea these documents only existed in Roper's little private drawer, which on its face doesn't make sense, but I just wanted to kind of get that out of the way, because when we get into the talking about like how they're gonna start making their, now if we consider the Roper's team to be the villagers and they're trying to find out who their werewolf is, all that, like there's way more logical, easy conclusions that they could have made if multiple copies existed. Everything hinges on there only having ever been one copy. And that does, I will go back and thank you for mentioning it. I will underline what I said in episode 4. When she showed him to Apo, like, don't show him the actual documents. Just retype the information.
Right. Oh, exactly. And don't ask them to handwrite stuff. Unless they need legal documentation later to prove, yes, this information's valid or something. But yeah, you're right. They should have never. Yeah, I really liked that you pointed that out. And I really wanted to highlight that for this episode because it really, they hinge on that, on Roper going, well, that's why we had to get rid of Oppo.
Right.
It was obviously his handwriting and stuff.
Okay, well, yeah, Oppo's definitely in trouble because of the handwriting. But like, here's, if there was ever, like, if Sandy had a copy of the documents, then the most logical chain of events would be first, like, say, hey, Sandy, you were the guy, in charge of talking to Apostol. Did you ever accidentally fuck up and show him these documents, or maybe leave them lying around somewhere where he could have got a hold of them? Because we've got a copy of it with his handwriting all over it. And also, the intelligence people in London have a copy of it. The first thing you would question Sandy, or again, anyone that possibly could have had access to the documents at all. And you would assume that it's Apostol. Apostol's your werewolf. His handwriting's all over it.
Right.
The only...
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. Like Apostol is definitely in trouble. But clearly the story wants us to be able to believe that Roper has deduced that there is a mole, and the mole is one of 6 people.
I thought his list was 4, but I would agree it should be bigger. It should include everyone on his fucking staff. Yeah. He's got a lot of people working for him at his, his Peninsula Spanish Castle compound. I mean, there's tons of people that should be under suspicion. But I think Roper is on a tight list of 4, which is good for the story. Doesn't super make sense for a pure plot kind of situation. And I think the 4 were Sandy, Corky, Pine, and Jed.
Yeah, those are them. Well, he first said the only 2 people that had him were me and Sandy. And this is a good place to, the episode begins on the airplane flying to some, I don't know, compound out in the middle of nowhere. Do you know what country they were headed, by the way? I think I missed that.
They're going to, are you talking about Haven?
Yeah, they're going to a compound called Haven, which is kind of like a black market, like kind of place that
in or around
kind of cultivated
in or around Iraq.
Okay, so there's somewhere oh, that's right. He said you'll feel at home then. That's right. So it had to be somewhere around Iraq. But on the plane ride, he brings this up to Pine. He's like, "Hey, the intelligence got these documents. The only people that had these documents was me and Sandy." And then what I liked is he directly asked Pine, "Are you the leak?" Like he's like, "There's a leak," and he's like, "Are you the leak?" And I like that because in interrogation, it's really important to ask direct questions like that and see their response. But Pine just says no, and they move on, and then they get to the compound, Um, and this is where I guess he's planned like kind of a pre-sales decision show where he's just going to show off the weapons to the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of the things I liked is when they get there, they start handing out food and clothes and supplies to like poor people on the border. So I guess he's using his charity that Pass I guess donates to, or that Roper's in charge of, that gives out supplies to like poor areas or third world areas or something, and that's his cover. And he says that this is our cover for to explain our presence. So I thought that was kind of clever, and probably is kind of accurate, quote unquote. And I think I'll leave it there. But
I think I think it's a fantastic cover. I think humanitarian aid distribution is the best cover that he possibly could have arranged, and he's backing it up in a speech at a conference that
mhm,
he gave way back in episode 1,
mhm,
where he was explaining his motivations for uh, humanitarian and economic building exercises, and how I actually don't do this out of the goodness of my heart. I do it because it is good for the world economy, and that's good for me.
mhm.
So he's got a huge, elaborate, and I think really like worthy of applause cover story as
Absolutely.
this guy, that because it I mean it it's great to pose as this superhero guy, but
Mhm.
he's not even doing that. He's kind of posing as a crass, self-interested capitalist who just happens to be doing the things that will make the world a better place in his view, and he has a very compelling argument for why that's the case. And it simultaneously allows him to travel to places, like the kind of places he would need to travel in and out of are,
Mhm.
as an arms dealer, are kind of exactly the kinds of places that, just looking at his itinerary would match that of the somewhat humanitarian but mostly capitalist guy that he is. It's
Right.
really fucking good.
Yeah, I think it's very, very clever. Um, and definitely, yeah, you're right. It definitely deserves applause on that. Um, but one of the first things that happens when they touch down, they're opening up some champagne and drinking, and Sandy's like pouring drinks, and as everybody walks away, Pine whispers to Sandy and mentions, "Hey, Roper thinks there's a leak," and Sandy's like, "What? No, that's bollocks," or whatever. I thought that was really clever of Pine, um, because he he doesn't he does it secretly with Sandy, kind of making him look, hey man, Roper's a little suspicious of everybody. So it's kind of like, hey Sandy, by the way, watch your back, or like, hey, I heard this. But he can also kind of fish for info that Sandy has. Like, did Roper tell Sandy? And Sandy might be like, yeah, I know, I don't know who it is, or by Sandy being like, whatever, that's stupid. No, he's not. That might tell Pine that, oh, well, he didn't tell Sandy. Why did he only tell me? Maybe he thinks I am the mole. Maybe he really did think I was the leak or something.
Well,
Um,
it wouldn't make a goddamn lick of sense for Roper to only confide in Pine.
right,
He would be confiding in Sandy first at this point,
right.
possibly a toss up between Corky and, but here's what I like to imagine, even though we don't see it, is that he did talk to each of them. He hasn't talked to Jed yet, because we will see that scene. But I
Mhm.
think that off camera, he also talked to Sandy, and he also talked to Corky, and he caused them all to maybe like want to look out for each other, and kind of stir the pot and see what comes up out of it. But that also that Sandy is smart enough to play ignorant when Pine mentions Roper's suspicions, because like I said, it doesn't make any sense for Roper to tell Pine and not Sandy, to me, at all. So
Really,
the only
you don't
yeah
think of? Well, if you isolate who has what information, you can get more information from that. So if you tell everybody, everybody knows, and so you can't really, it's like the control to the variable experiment. Like when you do an experiment, you have a control and then a variable. If you tell everybody, you have a good point that if you tell everybody, they might all be on their toes and might be stirring the pot, and then you just kind of throw a wrench in the situation and create a little chaos and see how everybody operates. So that, I guess that's one way, which is you're pointing out. But another way is if you give it to one person, you can isolate and determine how that information gets out, or if they are going to tell somebody, or how they're going to react to that. Um,
I mean, I could make a case. I could make a case for not telling Sandy, even though we don't see it on screen. That case would be Sandy was the most directly involved with dealing with Apostol. And so if Sandy had access to the papers by hook or by crook, like the one thing he knows is that at some point Apostol had the papers. That is a stone fact. How they got there is up to question. The fact that it's literal copies and not just like the information, but literally, like you can see, the papers were stolen from my desk by someone. Well, it wasn't Apostol, because I don't think Apostol ever visited the villa. So it's got to be someone else. And again, like I said, like I think if I was being really thorough, I'd be questioning all the kitchen staff at my villa as well. Like why also, like on his short list of people, the kitchen staff is not on his list. Frisky and Tabby are not on his list. Both of those guys had equal access, I mean, he tells Pine, like, Pine counters Roper's suspicions, even just mentioning Sandy. Pine is like, he'd never betray you, and Roper counters that with anyone could be a werewolf,
right?
And I think he believes that. I believe
Absolutely.
He believes that.
I that's why it's like a lot of these things, where it's making it look like Roper's incompetent. I'm wondering if he's just kind of watching and letting things play out a lot of the time. Because one of the things he does in this episode is he brings all of his suspects that he's identified as suspects to the Haven, and during this trade off, which I think we should maybe discuss in a little bit. But I think he's not as dumb as it looks on the surface. You know what I mean? I think he's actively paying attention.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I held off on watching episode 6. I want to watch that one clean. 6 will be our final episode. It's a miniseries of 6 episodes, but I am fingers crossed, hoping as an audience member that some of the stuff we see in Roper's behavior in episodes 4 and 5 will make more evil genius 3-dimensional chess kind of sense in episode 6 somehow.
Yeah, me too. The big deal happens, and there's a buyer, and they're gonna show off. Man, this was really messed up. Like Roper flat out like cleared the town. Like there was a small village nearby, and he like cleared the town to like show off the toys. And like just like bombs his place, man. It was kind of messed up, but they made you feel better. They was like, oh yeah, I made all the people leave. But you find out later that some old lady was too old to like leave and ends up like in the crossfire. It's pretty messed up. But the code name for this little fireworks display for the cellar, kind of like a demo, was Guy Fawkes, and I thought that was kind of cute. Because that's the old story where he bombed the building.
I didn't catch that, but I like it.
Yeah, and then but one of the pieces of tradecraft I really want to point out is Pine is the face of Trade Pass, and he's taken onto it like perfectly, where he looks like this young upstart CEO, really charming, shaking hands and talking. And I like that he was able to glean from the buyer that the buyer went to LSE. So this could kind of narrow down who he is, get some info. So when he's writing down the information about when the trade off is going to happen, he can kind of get that out to when he sends out the note, which I thought
Sorry,
I thought that was
can you explain LSE?
the London School of Economics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the buyer was like, "Yeah, I went to the London School of Economics, and I learned everything I know about business from your own capital, London." And I just thought it was really cool that he was able to just in his kind of take it. It takes me back to when we did The Man Who Knew Too Much 56, and just watching Louis Bernard just so masterfully get all that information out of Jimmy Stewart. He was just breathing. He wasn't even trying. It kind of made me feel like that.
I saw it a slightly different way. I did applaud Pine for trying to, as you say, in this way of like casually gleaning information, but me having missed maybe the significance of the London School of Economics, I thought the buyer was a very just kind of a stone wall of information, just not giving up anything.
Right.
But backup plans, start writing down license plate numbers.
Yeah.
Right, he gets a ton of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, but yeah, this would lead us into Pine's big play, and he starts this. We don't see him do this, but I presume he's the one that sabotaged the generator.
Sure. So let's first establish though why he's making his play now, like what the timing is. And I think it's just two things. It's first of all, he thinks he's got enough information to give, and also he's seen the weapons display and he's horrified by it, and knows that this is no joke. So yeah, he's gonna start taking like instant. I mean, this is when he starts making very risky plays. Everything he's done so far has been fairly cautious, fairly holding back. But of course he's the one that sabotages the generator. Is that necessary? I mean, his objective. Well, he's got two objectives here, or well, he should only have one objective, which is to get the information out of the camp. Now
Right.
they did collect all the cell phones, so he's gonna have to sneak out the fence. Is sabotaging the generator a help for him on that mission? I would say no. I'd say it's a hindrance.
Well, he's in a military camp that's probably being watched and patrolled. How else would he get out?
Oh, so that they don't have lights and okay, right. Okay, so it is a help. It is a help.
Right. I mean, presumably somebody would have night vision, but I mean, they still would have to go get them on. I'm sure they're not just wearing them all day, right? Especially if the camp's lit regularly.
Sure, but he thinks this is important enough to make his play now.
Right.
Um,
But in the middle of this sabotage, he waits till Roper leaves his tent that Jed was in, and we get to see Roper kind of interrogating Jed a little bit. But I wanted to talk about why the fuck is Pine seeing Jed? I mean, he needed cash to pay the cab driver to get the note out, but why would he go see Jed? Corky's already on his ass about his uncomfortable relationship with Jed to begin with. Corky's got is I got a hard on chasing Pine. Why would he go see Jed? I'm sure you could just steal cash from somebody. And doesn't he have cash as Andrew Birch?
I'm certain. Well, that's where I was going to raise my hand. I'm certain he should have just had cash.
Right.
100%. They're just dragging Jed more into the story than I'm personally morally certain that Jed plays a much smaller role in the novel than she does in this TV series. I haven't personally read any Le Carre, but the movies that I have seen, he strikes me as a person that really only thinks about men and men's point of view, and that female characters are probably just very incidental. I think the Jed character has all the hallmarks. Now, I did check, and I mean, she does exist in the novel. The romance between Pine and her happens, but I feel like I see all the hallmarks of the people sitting down with the novel and saying, we gotta punch up this female character. You know, notice they had to do a gender flip on, because Burr was originally Leonard Burr. So they do a gender swap on her. Awesome. We get some Olivia
And make
Colman.
her pregnant, which is even more awesome.
Right.
She's probably my favorite character of the whole show is Angela. I love her. Yeah.
I will lay money on the idea that the permanent secretary is a male in the novel.
Right. Okay.
And that was just another spot where they saw an opportunity. Well, here's an easy way to bring another female character, into the story. And everything about Jed's character just feels like people trying, like scriptwriters taking notes from the production company and saying, you got to give the females more stuff to do.
Yeah.
Which is a laudable goal. Let's be clear about that, in my opinion. But sometimes when it is just done for the sake of doing it, you can kind of see the fingerprints around it. And yeah, I mean, well, Jed being here too. Can I talk about that for a second?
Well, yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
Frisky. It's not my imagination that it's very weird that Roper brings her to Haven, flies her in. Frisky comments on it. He says, "This is weird. The boss has never done this before." Corky comments on it.
Yeah, he says it's a bad sign.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, but from Roper's perspective, what's he trying to accomplish? I guess, I mean, it's funny. I mean, he does want to give her a slap, and he does want to put the psychological pressure on her. This is when he, like, werewolf checks her.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. I think he's bringing all of his personal suspects in to the camp so he can kind of, do his interrogation on all of them. You know what I mean?
And that part makes sense. What doesn't make sense to me is Pine needing to visit Jed. The excuse seems to be the cash. But that's an excuse that I don't think either of us thinks holds water.
No, it doesn't. And he, on top of that, he tells her exactly who he is. And then they fucking kiss, which I guess if he wants to keep up either the relationship is real or not for him, right? And if it's real, he's gonna kiss her, and if it's not, he's got to keep up the ruse of the relationship, if he's trying to use her or something. But why would he go out of his way to tell him all of the? I work for British intelligence. We set up the whole kidnap. Now is not the time to tell her everything. You already know Corky's up your ass. Roper's already suspicious. Why would you say that? Anybody could have heard you outside those tents. It's not like they're soundproof, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think they're just trying to crowbar Jed into more of the story than her original character, deserves or can support without a deeper rewrite. Before we get off this, there's something I want to say before we get off this subject. Something that's occurred to me many times watching this show is that this also could have been Jed's story. I think I've also seen that movie, maybe just in a more classic black and white era of movies. This movie could have been like, this story could have been told from her perspective,
Oh
where,
yeah, absolutely.
she has a problematic marriage with a man that she has some vague suspicions about what he does for a living. A charming stranger intrudes into their lives, and he's very mysterious, and he's very fucking sexy.
Yeah,
um
right.
and and what happens with that, and her process of going along, and eventually at this point finding out, like, oh my god, the guy I fucked is a spy. It really could have gone that way.
Right.
So there's a version of the story where Jed, I can see there's a version of the story where Jed is 100% central. In the version of the Night Manager that we're getting, as much as I like watching Biteki on screen, um, it's, just some of it feels forced.
I feel the same way, especially about this scene, and I think there's a number of them where it was just like this was not necessary, and yeah, I think you're right that a lot of it was just kind of shoved in. Um, but Pine leaves. Roper comes back, and Jed gives like this false confession. She's the one that initiates the apology, and just says, "Oh, I want to apologize. I did snoop around and took pictures of your documents, and I didn't show them to anyone, and I'm really sorry." He's like, "Why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that." And she's like, "I wanted to know what the man that I'm sleeping with does for a living, and you're never honest with me." She definitely plays the upset wife, or I guess main squeeze well, you know, and it's not obvious. Well, I guess us as the audience, it's obvious because we know what's going on. But if you've been in a relationship, you could see this working. But I like how she kind of implied Corky was the leak, because this was Pine's idea. Was we got to throw Corky under the bus? She was just like, yeah, and Corky told me never to leave my phone around. He was like, Roper's like, Corky just like, yeah, he found it and he brought it to me and told me never to leave it around. But I deleted the images after a week, and I'm really sorry, and I'll never do it again. Like, I know everything is going around. So I thought it was kind of cute, the way she played it. But I didn't, do you think it's believable that Roper would fall for that, considering how suspicious he is right now and who he can or can't trust?
I'm gonna go with, I think it's literally perfect. It's just enough. It's just enough of a subtle hint, to not, because she's putting it to Roper like, Corky was trying to help me, and help us.
Mm-hmm.
So she's at no point is she like giving any kind of like, like when you're playing werewolf villager, you kind of want to throw some suspicion on someone, say, hey, that guy doesn't look too good. Here she's saying like, oh no, that guy looks great. He's totally
Yeah.
on your side. He totally helped me, and recover from what could have been a very bad mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But she knows that, or I mean, maybe it's too clever by half, but I call it perfect. The only quibble I have, this is again one of those points where I stumbled over this problem of like, wait a second, did Corky not have a legitimate access to the documents? I guess not, because if he did, then everything falls apart.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And it sounds like he didn't. And well, especially he got cut off, with the whole throwing him under the bus, where he gets kind of removed from his position.
Yeah, but
And now he's just kind of Jed's
the
babysitter.
documents existed before that.
Oh, that's
Um,
true. Yeah, that's true.
again, that's why I wanted to mention, like, everything makes sense as long as you accept the premise there was only ever one copy of the documents, and nobody else had legitimate, like, nobody except Roper was supposed to ever see them, ever.
Right. Well, no, he said Sandy did.
Well,
Right.
then, like I said, then your logical thing would be to go to Sandy and say, Sandy, hey, buddy, um, did you ever maybe accidentally show Apostol these papers? or leave them lying around somewhere where Apostol could have gotten to them, because
Right.
that would be your plausible explanation. And that would just, like, it makes so much logical sense, because again, the major fact that you've got to work with on Team Bad Guy is that Apostol wrote a bunch of handwritten shit on these papers and gave them to MI6. How did Apostol get them? That's a question. That's the question you need to answer if you're on Team Bad Guy. But if Sandy or anyone ever had access to the papers, then it's a straight line of logic, and you don't have, even though it would be incorrect, it's logical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. So from this, after this, we see we switch to Pine, and he's trying to get out of the fence. He uses some bolt cutters to get out. He's gonna try and get the note that he has out to someone, and Corky finds him. And Corky's plan, Corky being the very wise clairvoyant, is like, oh, the power went out. That's suspicious. Let me go look into this. Oh, look who it is. It's Pine. How did I know? It's very, very cheeky, and he's about to, Corky's plan is to kill Pine. What do you think? Like, should he have tried to kill Pine, or should he have taken him to Roper? Or also, it's like, why is he getting close to him with a gun? I hate this in movies all the time. Like, this is definitely bad self-defense points. If you have a ranged weapon, don't get next to the guy, especially if you know the guy is ex-military. You know what I mean? Like, keep your distance. It's a ranged weapon for a reason. Like, he has to get to you. You know what I mean? Like, and if he runs away, you shoot him. You know what I mean? Like,
well, to be fair, it's some pretty complicated terrain that they're on here, with the hole in the fence and the steep, rubbly kind of incline that they've got, and it's
true.
Dark, and the generator's out.
Right.
But I would circle back and say, like, why is Corky waiting on his own? Here's where I give minus 5 points to Corky, and they're gonna get him killed. Where instead of okay, so if you go back and look through his head, he's got this information. Well, at least he suspects Pine went out through a hole in the fence. Go fucking tell someone.
Right.
Don't individually just lurk there and wait for whoever came back. Or if you are gonna do that, like, do it surreptitiously, so that you can get that information, so you can just watch and see who came back, and then go report it to whoever. But he doesn't do that. And actually, like, why you asked the question, like, him wanting to kill Pine here, I didn't actually see that. Can you explain? Because I thought, and I could be wrong, I thought his plan here was, I'm gonna take you in.
No, he said, I'm gonna kill you here right now. Those are like the words he said.
Well, actually, I think that's a good idea. I'm on this side of the fence. Pine is on that side of the fence. There's a hole in the fence. I've been telling you this guy is trouble all this time. Sabotage generator. Frisky or Tabby might be like, well, you next time this happens, come and get us before you try to take care of it on your own. But I would call it good. I think if he managed to put the bullet into Pine at this point, then it's I think Corky wins.
Oh, that's a good point. If he's able to kill him, then but how is he going to explain that he killed him or why he killed him? Well, I guess it works both ways, because when Pine kills him, he says Corky was on the other side of the fence. So he basically does the werewolf, the politician. I wasn't the one with the hand in the cookie jar. The guy who found me with my hand in the cookie jar was the one with the hand in the cookie jar. You know what I mean? Like, so I guess it works for Pine when he tells on Corky. So I guess it would have worked if Corky shot him and be like, I found Pine outside.
Yeah, I mean, it works out. Like, I like it and I don't. like I think whatever it is, left brain, right brain, one half of my brain likes it because it's cool, and the other brain doesn't like it because Corky should have been smarter.
Right.
But it definitely, like, it just puts a fat fucking dead werewolf in your lap that you can wrap up. Oh, and he's smart enough and also brutal enough. And this kind of bothered me a little, but I guess you got to do what you got to do in the moment. Like, he physically beats Corky to death in the short time that he's got before Frisky and Tabby and Roper are going to show up, because the first rule of Paranoia, a role-playing game that I used to play a lot, was that the best way for any debriefing to begin, when you go up against the computer and you have to explain what happened, the best opening for any debriefing is when you can say, "I speak without fear of contradiction when I say blah blah blah," which is a way to say, like, it's good to have everyone that could contradict your story be dead before you have to answer to the authoritas. So yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. How do you think Pine throwing Corky under the bus was executed? Because talking it with you kind of makes me feel better about it. But whoever survived this little tussle between the two of them, I want to believe Roper would have been suspicious of. You killed one of my men. You're claiming they were the traitor. How do I know you're not the traitor and you just were the one that won? You know what I mean? Like, whoever survives clearly isn't the traitor. Like, what if Corky beat Pine and goes, "Hey, Pine was on the outside. He's your traitor," right?
Yeah, well, like I said before, like I'm hoping, but not planning, to see some 3-dimensional chess thinking from Roper evidenced in episode 6. But right now, I think the scene at the fence, it's just too perfect. It's just too perfect.
Yeah.
This part I buy as Roper. If I'm Roper, I'm like, yeah, this all fits. It all fits just too well. Is my only problem with the plot on it, that, like, it just feels like almost a little prescient for Pine to have told Jed to plant the seed of Corky's suspicion in Roper's mind immediately before he goes out, and for it to just all, like, land so neatly into his lap as a consequence.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah.
But what I'm looking at is Roper, like, everything fits. And we already hit an hour. Let's see if
let's land this.
Yeah, let's land this plane.
Well, the episode ends. The deal's made. Angela gets the note that Pine sends out. Angela calls her buddy from the U.S., and the U.S. military goes to stop the caravan of trucks that are supposedly delivering weapons. And all of a sudden, they get pulled over. They open it, and it's all grains and farming equipment and whatever. And Roper says they should have looked at the cups. And as we remember a couple episodes ago, Roper does this whole cup and ball trick. And I loved the parallel of that. And I thought it was really cool, because basically Roper's play was the caravan coming from that compound led to believe that there were weapons on them, right? And it looked like that boat, I think Angela mentioned the boat hit port and dropped some stuff off and then left. They thought it was dropping off the weapons there, and instead it just never left the ship, and then they went somewhere else. And so they're all paying attention to this caravan. Everybody's putting their eggs in one basket type of thing, and it turns out that they've been tricked by Roper's cup and ball trick, which I thought was kind of cool. So that's kind of where the episode leaves us, and we kind of got to see how things turn out after this.
Very much looking
for
forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And yeah, Did you have anything else you wanted to kind of point out, or?
I'm good. I think we nailed it.
All right, sounds good. Well, that was The Night Manager, episode 5. Make sure to join us next week for the final episode 6. You can listen to us at spieslikeus.net or just search Spies Like Us Podcast on any podcast app that you use. And make sure to give us a shout out. Say hello, comment. You can tweet us at spies_like_us, or our Facebook page is facebook.com/spieslikeUspodcast. And we'll see you next week.
All right, let me just put a quick cherry on that, because we do really want to hear your feedback, and you send us anything, whether it's a comment on iTunes or a comment on Facebook. If you put if you put a PTP at the end of that, capital PTP, we'll take that as permission to publish, and we'll read your comment on the episode.
Oh, that's a really good idea. Yeah.
I stole it from another show.
Oh, for sure.
All right, man. See you next week.
The preceding transmission sampled the song Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net.